Hey everyone, I want to share a little bit about myself in this video and just tell you about who is this person that, talks about self-healing and all of these things. Like, how does she know? Where's this coming from? So I'd like to just let you into a little bit of my experience. I probably won't be able to share with you who I am or what this person is just in one video, but what I can share is my own experience and how everything led me to where I am right now, and you being here watching this video. So my own healing journey started probably when I was about 25, and I experienced a very sudden loss in my life. My fiance at the time died in a motorbike accident, and it completely turned my world upside down. It really just changed my entire life, or what I thought of as my entire life. Just turned it all upside down. And up to that point, I don't think I had much self-awareness or much interest in healing. I was just living life like everybody does, every 20-year-old does. In my youthful years, I went out partying all the time. Just living life, going to work, just doing what people do, socializing, being human, being a teenager, wanting to appear grown up. And all of that changed. We were in a very long relationship, 10 years at that point. One morning he left for work and he never came back. And it had a huge impact on me and my life. And that's when I slowly started turning towards other things. Things that were important to me were no longer important. I used to love shopping, buying clothes. No interest in it anymore. Just certain things that seemed so amazing and important were just meaningless. Everything, in a way, became meaningless for a while. And there was also a very long time when this loss served me as an identity, when I was hiding in that identity of being the one who lost someone, of being the one who's grieving. I'm not even sure I was fully aware of it at the time, but it was definitely there. Poor me, this is what happened to me. And yes, it was tough, and it sucked. Big time. But I was very much hiding in that. Because I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to deal with the grief, with the pain, with all the emotions. Nobody ever told me. Nobody showed me. And there are loads of books out there and groups, and none of it resonated, none of it worked. I didn't want to hear about anybody else's story. I had my own to process, I just didn't know how. And so for 3 years onwards, I kind of did some changes, made some changes in my life, changed my work, or at least where I worked. I started working for myself, and I tried to somehow build a life for myself, a new life for myself, just me. And I had some amazing, amazing people in my life throughout that time, thankfully. but it also felt really, really empty, and I was continuously searching for the next fit, the next thing that would make me feel alive. You know, whether that was the idea of jumping out of a plane, driving a sports car, doing my motorbike license for a big, big bike, to feel somehow more connected to him. Or anything like that, there was always some kind of seeking for aliveness. And what I didn't realize at the time was how much I was actually holding back and repressing my emotions around this. How I didn't want to feel anything. And so 3 years later, I decided to pack up my entire life and go travel the world. But before I was able to do that, I realized I had to do some inner work. I had to do a therapy. And the person I found to work with had a somatic approach. So her approach wasn't just cognitive therapy. It was connecting the mind to the body. And it was very, very powerful. And I think for the first time I was able to tap into that trauma just for a moment in all of those sessions. I think it was just for a moment when I really, really tapped into that trauma, that moment when my body shut off from my mind, when I actually lost all sense of everything around me. And so I worked with her for a few months, I think. Also working through packing up my old life, letting go of clients, of relationships, of the known, of, you know, all of these things. It was a really intense process, but also very necessary. And so I went on an adventure to go find myself. And I knew I wasn't going to come back. I think a part of me knew that because I made plans to sell everything. It started off wanting to leave maybe for 3 months, then it turned into 6 months. Then I thought, oh, maybe I could take a year off. And the more I kind of allowed myself to fall into the idea, the more I realized, what if I don't want to come back? What if that is it? What if I want to just be able to leave and not have anything to come back to, just to have that freedom? And as scary as it was, I just did that. I basically cut all the strings, all the commitments that I had, and went to travel, wherever it took me. And I think that's when the real healing started, in one way or another. In one way or another, I was searching for myself out there in the world. Whatever that meant, I had no idea. For some kind of connection to myself. And all of these amazing experiences I had never led to that. And so the more I was trying to find my way, the more it was leading me back to practices like meditation, mindfulness, yoga, all of these practices that connect us back to ourselves. And I ended up staying in a recovery center here in Thailand actually for a few months, and went into their intense program. Therapy, body therapy, yoga, meditation, energy release, all of these kind of things, all of the holistic spiritual approaches that we can take for healing. and I completely immersed myself into it. And it was so magical, so freeing, and it just went from there to the next thing, to the next teacher, to the next release. And so traveling never really was about traveling anymore in a way. In a way it was, because I love exploring new cultures and food and learning from other people. But it was very much a journey deep into myself. And what really struck me was how much more therapy or healing I needed after I thought I had healed what needed to be healed in my therapy back in England. So here I was again at another meditation or retreat center, healing in therapy, doing more work. And maybe that's what it is. Maybe it takes step by step by step, bits at a time. But what I really want to share about is how I was never really able to get to the core of that grief, of that bereavement, of the loss, because I wasn't integrating all parts of it, all of the emotions. And what I mean specifically is that I wasn't allowing the anger to come into the healing process and do its thing. I was grieving, I was crying, I was screaming, I was sad, I was depressed. I was all of those things, but never ever once was I angry. I couldn't. It was completely repressed, and it has been repressed, or it had been repressed for most of my life, and I didn't know it. And I think I want to share this for anyone out there who has lost someone or another being in their life. It doesn't have to be a person. It could have been a pet, an animal, anything that was really dear to them. I don't really see a difference in separating or making distinction of, this loss is more difficult than that loss. A parent losing a child, a lover losing a lover, a partner, a spouse, a person losing an animal that they lost. I don't think it makes any difference whatsoever, because love is love, pure love is pure love. And when we lose, and it hurts, no matter what it is what we lose. So for anyone out there who's, dealing with grief, and maybe you can relate. Maybe you can relate to years and years, or even decades of not being able to fully release or let go of that pain. Maybe you've been living it with all your life, and you want to share that with me. And tell me, Sabrina, it doesn't get better, or yes, it does get better, it changes. Or yes, you can fully let go, because I do believe that we can. So whatever or whomever we have lost, there's a trauma in the body, and it's stored in the cells, deep in the subconscious, and in the energetic body. So when I was releasing all of those emotions throughout all these years at different times, in different places, in different ways, I was never releasing the anger because I didn't allow it to come up. It was so repressed all of my life. And it is only through that expression, that acknowledgement of that anger, of that deep fury at life, at God, at Him, at everything and everyone around me, at myself. Just acknowledging that anger, that fury, that absolute terror, was I able to really fully feel and embrace and allow the whole spectrum of the grief, not just parts of it. I had one moment, maybe a year after he died, where I was really furious. I was drunk. I went out with a friend and I heard something about him that made me so mad. And I remember going back home and just swearing my head off at him, screaming into the night. That was the only time I ever allowed myself to feel just a tiny little fraction of that anger. And I wasn't even fully conscious, I was drunk. So bringing that anger into my experience and into the grief has allowed me to just completely let go and feel every single emotion around it. And so my invitation here is for you to see which aspects of your grief you may not allow yourself to feel or to come up. And it doesn't have to be anger. Maybe you are angry all the time at life, at the person or the being that died. Maybe you're so furious, but you can't tap into the hurt, or into the sadness, or into the fear. Because it is so scary. Scary to not only feel all of those things, but also to face life afresh, alone. So whatever it is, my invitation is for you to just look within. And maybe you feel called to share that with me. Or maybe it's just for your own processing, whatever it is. I wanted to just check in with you and share a little bit about myself and my experience around grief and loss and emotional repression. And perhaps about the magic that lies beneath all of that, or within all of that, the freedom within that experience of grief.